Welcome to Multifamily Method, a podcast which explores the state of the multifamily real estate market and some of the backgrounds, methodologies, and words of wisdom from some of today's most successful multifamily real estate entrepreneurs nationwide.
I mean, in a lot of ways, it's definitely more mental because, again, you can always go farther than you think you can, and you can always find a way to do that. Now, are you willing to suffer that much? Are you willing to go to a place that, quite frankly, is really scary that most people don't know exists? I mean, maybe, maybe not.
Hi, I'm Jad Rishan. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to be speaking with George Chmiel, who is a childhood friend to Brian Ford, the founder of Capstone Companies. George has a diverse background as an entrepreneur, a professional speaker, and an endurance athlete, as well as a charity fundraiser. He's also one of the initial investors in Capstone Companies. George is going to give us some insight into his background and how his initial investment launched Capstone into a leader in the multifamily investment sales space. We'll also chat with him about his current entrepreneurial endeavors, as well as his accomplishments as an endurance athlete and a charity fundraiser. Welcome to the podcast, George.
It's great to be here. Thanks, guys.
We will jump right into it. We typically start off the multifamily method with early years. So if you'd be so kind, tell us about your early childhood, growing up, and your progression on.
Yeah, grew up in Annapolis, Maryland, only child. Went to Catholic school, K through 12. My dad was an FBI agent for 52 years. Actually, I'm really proud to start off with that. The longest tenured FBI agent on the planet, 52 years, just retired 24 months ago. Really cool. They actually gave him a flag off the headquarters in DC when they did a surprise ceremony for him for service. So a pretty special thing, but someone that is just a humble man. You'd never know it, but served this country for over half a century. So pretty amazing. My mom worked on Capitol Hill when they met. So they were in DC. And then when she had me, she gave up her career to, raise the family and stuff like that. So grew up in a tight knit family. I mean, being an only child, you always get you're spoiled and you get a lot of presents at Christmas and all that stuff, which, yeah, I probably got a few more presents than most, middle income families. But they're also really up in your business. And that's a good and a bad thing. My mom rode me really hard as a child, just being the disciplinarian when my dad was working and making sure I got my homework done and making sure I got to all my sports practices and all my extracurricular stuff. So, when I look back and I talk about my early childhood and stuff, it was definitely, seeing the work ethic that my dad was putting in day to day. I mean, he was commuting 2 hours a day every day too. So you add all those years in, plus a massive commute, plus the type of work he was doing. So, I saw that work ethic firsthand, and then my mom riding me, instilling that in me. I think I owe a lot of who I am and what I do as a person now to that upbringing. And, when I got to high school, I was always a numbers guy and always liked gambling. I always liked the stock market, or I was fascinated by it. So for me, it was pretty early on. I was going to go into finance. I got an internship at Merrell in high school after my sophomore year. And that kind of exposed me to wealth management and that whole world. And so it was like, okay. So then when I started looking at schools, I was looking at business majors and stuff. And for me, the tough thing was it came down to BC, Wake Forest, and a couple other schools like that. But it was, do I want to go north? Do I want to go south? And am I going to be able to play baseball? And when it came down to it, I just fell in love with BC. And when I got in, it was kind of a no-brainer. So, that was my childhood. I always played sports. I was always, an outgoing person. I think that's part of when you're an only child. I mean, you don't have big Christmases, you don't have big family events, things of that nature. So you kind of maybe look for that outside looking in. And so that's, I think, in a nutshell, that kind of sums up my childhood. I mean, it's hard to put it in a few minutes.
Let's expand on the work ethic. I mean, your dad was, I'm sure the crazy stuff he was dealing with, and then your mom, can you expand on that a little bit?
Well, yeah. I mean, when he was a young buck, he was working the streets. So he was doing drug busts and robberies and white collar stuff, embezzlement. I mean, really hardcore stuff. I mean, he's been in multiple shootouts, breaking down walls, arresting drug dealers. I mean, all the stuff, undercover work. I mean, when he was back in his 20s, 30s, and I guess probably early 40s, I mean, he was definitely putting his life on the line on a pretty consistent basis. After 9/11, kind of transitioned more into anti-terrorist counterintelligence work. So more office work. And he had a lot of different sources working for him all over the Middle East, all over the world, to be honest. And, as cyber has become more important and tech has become more important, in a lot of ways, my dad sort of became a little more of a dinosaur, but like the experience that he had, I mean, he led the investigation on Hinckley, who shot Ronald Reagan. And I mean, he was on the cover of every newspaper in the world after he was arraigned, and he handled that investigation. And so the experience that he had real world, a lot like, all the brokers at Capstone, it's hand-to-hand combat, it's pounding the pavement, it's having the tough conversations. As much as tech evolves in the real estate world, it's still a relationship business. As much as, FBI and cyber and tech comes into that space, you still got to know how to talk to people. You still got to know how to read people and things of that nature. And so he actually just, I think, kind of became more and more revered over time. And he was, working with kids half his age by the time he retired. But there was no one else that had done nor could do what he did. And so I just, really proud of him. It was just an honor to watch that. And yet, he somehow found a way to make it to all my baseball games or football or basketball. I don't know how he did it. It's always there. And even when, he'd come home late at night and I'd be like, hey, I want to pitch or I want to do something or, hit me pop-ups, he always found time. It was pretty special, so it's, there's 3,000 miles away from me now. So I think as you get older, I'll always love, Jesse Itzler always says it. It's not, if your parents are in your 70s and your average lifespan is early 80s and, it's not, you don't have 10 years left. How many times you hang out a year with them? It's like twice. Okay, well, maybe you have 20 hangouts left with your parents or whatever. If you just say all things considered equal. And so I really appreciate the time spent with my parents now more than I ever did. It's special. It might not be there forever. And I think that's just I love Jesse, the way he frames that. And as we're kind of talking about this and time with your folks and whatnot, life is fleeting. And so I'm very appreciative of the folks that raised me and that I have, and hopefully they live for a long time.
So with both of your parents in public service, did you ever think about going that route, or was it always going to be business?
No, it never was, because I never wanted to be, and my dad kind of told me this, I never wanted to be the guy that was just kind of handed the job like, oh, and my dad's name's George too. Oh, so you're George Jr. You're just automatically going to walk into the bureau. Right. And he always encourages people, especially because so many people come to him like, oh, can you help me get in the bureau? Or can you introduce me to people, whatever. And he always encourages, go out, do something on your own, be successful, see the way the world works. And if you still want to come back now, I'll help you, but don't just come in because you're XYZ's son or daughter. And so for me, I never just wanted to be my dad or try and fill his shoes. And it wasn't necessarily my passion. I think I would have loved it. I think I would have been good at it. And I never saw my dad come home and say, I hate my job. I want to quit. I mean, he never had a bad day at work, or at least he didn't make it seem that way. And so I knew what he did was interesting and he loved it, but it was never something that was just ringing my bell, from just a pure passion standpoint.
Right.
How do you think that watching them work and him work specifically, and your mom helping you on the home front, with sports and everything else like that, how do you think that transitioned into your financial career that you had? And subsequent careers after that, because you've gotten out of really the 9 to 5 grind, I would say.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing I learned from my dad, there's so many things, but it's just like his humility. He never talks about himself or what he's done, or, he could sit there and be braggadocious or whatever. And he treated my friends, he'd treat Ford or Josh or my best friends the same way he treated me. He just loves everyone. And that was kind of the biggest thing for me, is that what he's done is so heroic and deserved to be honored so much more than it is. But yet he would never want that or ask for it. And he treats people with so much love and humility. I think that's amazing. But looking at the combination of the two, my mom she gave up her career, it allowed him to have the platform to just kind of focus on work and being a good father. She did everything else. Sure. And a lot of that stuff is thankless work, and a lot of people, whether it's, these days, obviously there's more stay-at-home dads, whether it's the mom or the dad, there's a lot of work done at the house that doesn't get the recognition for. And I think, that was, that's a challenge because she did everything to make it easy for my dad to have that sort of public persona and to be recognized on that platform when she was grinding away, doing all the little things. And maybe she didn't get the credit for that as much during the time or even now. And so I recognize that a lot more now than say when I was in my earlier mid-20s. And so, the combination of the two, and that's how it's, no marriages are perfect. No marriages work, exactly the same, but the way they balanced each out, it did work.
Yeah, it's the toughest job in the world as a stay-at-home parent.
Yeah, I mean, Alex and we. Yeah, I think you know it more when you have kids. You don't realize as soon as you have kids, you realize how much work there really is. Yeah, to be done at home.
Well, let's zoom back to high school because I think that's an important part of the story of how you tie into Capstone.
Yeah. So like I mentioned, I went to St. Mary's from K through 12, and it's a smaller school. So, every year when you would graduate and go to the next class, there would only be a handful of new people that would come in, whether they moved in or they're coming from the local public school or whatnot. So, and we were small. So it was very cliquey. It was very, you have your friends in second or third grade, and they're kind of your friends through high school. And any outsiders coming into the crew, it's, who are they? It's a little weird, and I mean, that's growing up, that's school, that's kids. Like you don't know any better. Right. And so Ford was one of those guys, obviously he grew up in Michigan and had moved to Maryland. And then he had been at a public school prior to coming to St. Mary's as a freshman. And so when you come into St. Mary's as a freshman, but pretty much me and all my friends, we've been there for 8 years and there's only a handful of new people. You don't even really necessarily want to make the time to get to know them because you already know so many people you're super close with. And then you're starting high school and everything. So when I met Ford, I met him the first week freshman year. He had just met one of my good buddies, Brett Bowman, and Brett said, "Oh, you need to go talk to Chmiel. You need to meet Chmiel and talk to him." So he approached me in the hallway. I'm like, "Who the hell is this guy?" He just came up to me. He's like, and he's, I obviously had a very significant speech impediment at the time, and came up to me and he was, stuttering. He was getting it out, and he's like, "Hey, Brett Bowman's your buddy?" I'm like, "Yeah, Brett's my buddy." And he's like, "Well, he said you guys are hanging out. He says you're a good guy. Like, can I come hang out with you guys this weekend and maybe sleep over?" And I'm like, "What?" The audacity. Who the hell is this guy? You want to come hang out? I don't know you. And then you throw out can I sleep over? And maybe I'll meet, whatever. And I always remember it was just so funny. It was the first night we hung out. I mean, it was we had known each other forever and we were just brothers. And, he ended up sleeping over. I told this story in the Best Man. So he ended up sleeping over at my house in my bedroom. I don't know how we both ended up on the floor, but my dad comes in to wake us up the next morning. And, obviously he probably hopes I have a girl over and walks in and me and Ford are cuddling on, the floor, our first night's hanging out. And now it's been history since then. But no, I mean, Brian had, that was a tough challenge just coming into St. Mary's, ingratiating yourself with, the student body, getting to know people, and obviously, not being from the state, obviously having a speech impediment, which was really, for people that didn't know him, was really, really hard, was really a challenge. And people can be cruel, especially in high school. And he dealt with a lot of that. And he always dealt with it with class and kept working and kept working and kept working until, he effectively beat it. And I was so proud of him. And to go from where he was to becoming homecoming king or prom king, excuse me. I mean, it's just an extraordinary accomplishment, to just be someone that no one knew, that no one liked, that no one gave a chance to, one of the most popular people in the school 3 years later. It's just, that's Ford. And that's why people love him. That's why Capstone is what it is. And that's why so many people work for him loyally and will do anything for him. I think the best of the best.
I think prom king is new information for me.
Oh, you didn't know that?
Yeah, no.
I
don't think we got some.
I got plenty of photos of that night.
I'll have to post some of those.
That's great.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was kind of him and the prom queen were not the best of matches. It was hysterical. So we have some very awkward photographs and stuff of them. It was great.
That's awesome. Okay. So then, talk to us about the first time Brian approached you to, be an investor in Capstone, and then, obviously
Sure.
It wasn't a rocket launch at the beginning of the firm.
Oh, for sure. I started working for Merrill Lynch as soon as I graduated. I was lucky. I made a really smart move my junior year of college. It's 2002. The tech bubble had burst in 2000. So you had 3 years of equity market correction. All the companies, all the financial services companies were laying off. No one was hiring. In junior year at BC, everyone goes abroad in the spring. You don't want to go abroad in the fall because it's football season. You go in the spring. And all my buddies went to Rome or Florence or Sydney or, you name it, all over the place. And I was like, no, I need to stay here and get an internship. It's going to be really challenging. And looking back, it was one of the best moves I did. It was a sacrifice I had to make because I had never traveled really out of the country. But I got an internship with Merrell. I worked hard at it. And then my senior year, right at the beginning, like my second week of school, I got my offer. And all my buddies were now back from abroad and they were all scrambling. And I was like, I'm good for the year. I don't get kicked out. Right, and so I was, I dropped my double major. I had like 2 classes left in accounting. I'm like, no, I'm good with finance. That's fine. And so I was lucky that I got into a big bank right away. I worked hard for it. Things fell in place. And then once you're there, it doesn't matter where you went to school, your background is whatnot. You got thousands of people all grinding. And so, I worked hard, worked my way up, didn't make a lot of money the first few years, but then after that started doing really well and had a great 13-year run at Merrill. And so I was one of the few individuals, early mid-20s, that was really doing well. And Ford was burnt out. He had worked at a couple of companies, wasn't really happy with what he was doing, didn't really see it. And, he came to me, I forget the exact time, but he was just, I want to start my own real estate company. I can do it better. I believe I can get it, just the whole pitch, like, and everything. Right. I'm like, Brian, I don't care if you're selling widgets or real estate, man. You want to do it, I'm in. And I was like, how much do you need? And it was as simple as that. As long as I had it, I was going to give it to him. Cause that's just how much I believe in the guy. And I just know you'll figure it out. And that's the one thing that differentiates Brian as a CEO versus a lot of other startup CEOs, entrepreneurs, whatever. He's going to find a way to make it work no matter what, or he's going to die trying. And he truly means that. He's a true fiduciary of investor assets. And you don't see that enough these days. People raise money, and once the capital's in the door, so often it's just, okay, let's go. But it's like those people are, all right, we'll send an investor update and that's it. And that's not the case with Brian. And so, when he came to me, it was Bowman's bachelor party weekend. I might have had a couple beers. I might have been a little.
He knew when to get you vulnerable.
When I actually stroked the check, I might have been a little lubed up. But the decision had already been made. It was cool. We actually have a picture of it from the hotel, and then we went straight to the tailgate at Wrigley Park after. So,
nice.
It was a cool weekend. Yeah, and then Capstone morphed so. In the early days before, Alex, you were there early, but even like the couple years before you were there as an intern. We had a group of guys in Atlanta, that were let go, and some of the stuff they were doing, wasn't exactly above board. And then there was other people that came and went. And so, and a lot of people don't know how much Ford really struggled financially those first few years, the sacrifices he made, the money he lost, the things he had to do to just continue working. He really gave it his all, and his parents were worried. His mom, I love his mom. I love his parents, by the way. He always call him George, I'm worried about Brian. That's the way I'm worried about Brian. We're worried, like, he's turning 30. He's broke. The company's not doing anything. He's never going to get married. I'm so worried about Brian. And then, fast forward to 40. Hey, Mom, stop worrying. He's crushing it.
Yeah.
So that was always funny. And if she hears this, I love you. But no, man, he just, whatever it takes, he was going to find a way. He's going to find a way no matter what. And, I would give Ford my last dollar if it came to anything, if he needed it. And he's earned the trust and respect of so many people, and what he overcame, as a child, moving around, how tough it's been on him. He deserves every bit of success he gets and more. And, I hope him and his family live a really, really long time. And he's going to do so much to kind of continue to give back the way he has already. So it's a very special person. And, it's incredible to see the company that has come from his dream.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I joined, I guess, a couple of years after Alex, and I think I'm one of the first 5 or 6 brokers to have joined the firm. Definitely the first office outside of Charlotte. And I distinctly remember a conversation in the Lion's Den.
Yes.
During one of the holiday parties. And I actually didn't even, we were so focused on building business. I didn't even know about your involvement and, and who you were. And we were having a conversation that night, a few in as usual. And he was telling me a story about how you guys were having a conversation whether or not you were going to get your investment back. And he told me, I promise you before the day I die, you will pay it back. So my question is, at what point in time from the outside looking in, did you see, okay, this thing's going to do well and this thing's on the right track and we're going and Capstone's going to be okay?
Yeah. I mean, you never know. I mean, I would say, Alex, when we were down in Mexico in 2013 for the 5-year, I'd say at that point we had kind of, they call crossing the chasm sort of. I mean, we had kind of hit that, I think, inflection point where now it wasn't desperate pitching people to come join. People wanted to join. Alex was there as an intern and had a chance, and he was excited to come on board, right? A lot of times you just do an internship and you're like, oh, I'm going to learn a little bit. I'm going to meet a few people and then I'm going to figure out what I want to do. And it's probably not this. I mean, he was excited to come on board. Austin was there. He was doing great, AJ, and it was starting to snowball. So at that point, it just felt right. Like it felt good. It felt organic. It didn't feel desperate. It just felt like it was growing the way that it should. And then over time, I mean, it's just snowballed. I mean, it's really just picked up steam. And I mean, the company is a powerhouse now. It's great with so many opportunities and then looking at getting into different areas and making strategic investments and things. I mean, it's fantastic. So, I mean, I think kind of around the 5-year mark for me was when, I started seeing it firsthand and feeling it from the inside out.
Yeah. And then I think we sought out Brian and Bo about a year or so later when we were trying to grow our team in Florida. And it was, talk to Capstone or a couple other guys in the market. And, we had those early conversations and
it's like when Ford sits down and gives the pitch, we're truly a family. Like it's not bullshit. It's authentic.
Yeah.
So many people give that pitch and you can see right through them, or maybe they're putting one over your head. But when Ford says that, you feel it, you believe it, you know it to be true. And that's what people want to be a part of. People want to be a part of something bigger than themselves. Yeah. And that's what it is now.
I think the craziest thing is that through all this growth and now being the largest privately held multifamily brokerage in the country, we've still maintained that identity as a family. And it's still, NMHC, we're all hanging out, right? It's a, very family-like environment.
Yeah. And I know it keeps, we've had conversations. I know it keeps them up at night to be able to maintain that while we're expanding. Yeah. And so far we've been able to do it. And it's tough because, the more people you add, the opportunity to dilute the culture becomes.
Well, for sure. And I mean, he's got to spend so much more time on admin and things that aren't culture related or aren't growing the business related. It's just busy work. And that gets to be a challenge. And then when you add the fact you want to grow a family and you've been humping it for 20 years and whatnot. Yeah, it's not, somebody's probably in some parts you're like, oh man, I miss the old days where it was just like hammering the phones, Yeah.
But when I tell clients, I said, if you want to see the living embodiment of our culture, come to NMHC. Because if you go to NMHC and you see how all the other brokerage shops are running their businesses, their Florida office is in one location, their Charlotte office is in another location, their Denver office, and so on and so forth. And we're all under one roof. And not only are we all under one roof, we're all going to dinner together at the end of the day. We're all meeting up at the same bar at the end of the night. We're all having coffee and laughs and stuff in the morning. And it's just, you don't see that in other shops.
No, it was great. And even just out here in San Diego, the first night, the Monday night, we were on the water at the happy hour event, and seeing how the new guys from Oklahoma and everyone was just integrating. And it was like, it's been like this for 5 years and it's new. And it's a very special thing. And again, that's top down and that's everyone. I mean, the core values, right? Core values that you pitch and like being authentic with them. It's so exciting to see.
Absolutely. That's exactly right. Let's transition back a little bit more into you. And you had obviously a great, career at Merrell. You're able to help friends, able to be very successful. What have you done since then? What led you to leave Merrell? What are you focusing on? Let's talk about the last 15 years or so of George.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when I was at Merrell, I got into my running and started running marathons, started running ultra marathons, things of that nature. And then started
kind of
really
glaze over that. Like,
yeah, I just kind of glaze over.
It's kind of a big thing. Yeah.
Well, all right. So like when you're working on the trading floor, like go back to like 2006, right? Before the crash, and you're working on the floor, you're putting in massive days. And I mean, you see all the movies about it, and especially the ones in the late 80s. Okay. Like that might be a little bit much. Like people aren't doing blow on the countertop and topless girls coming in and stuff like that. But it is a very intense environment. You got 4 flat screens. You're on the phone all day. It's a very loud. There's people everywhere. I mean, it's exhausting. You're on your feet the whole day, and you're going day after day after day. I mean, that really wears at you over time. And like my 3rd year in New York, like I blew out my wrist, actually stupid injury, post poultry football bowl, back home with my high school buddies, thinking I'm still 17 and, so I have to have surgery. And, when you add surgery, cast, cold winter in New York, working crazy hours, and then obviously going out a lot. What does that all add up to? Probably an extra like 25 pounds, and not the healthiest lifestyles. Like, so for me, that spring of 2007, I got my cast off. My wrist was still kind of messed up, and I couldn't lift. I couldn't really work out, and I'd never run. I always looked at running as a punishment. I hated running other than like playing sports, like most people do. And I admit that. I still don't love running to this day. It hasn't changed. So I started training. I was like, I have to run because I can't lift. And after like 3 days, I was like, screw this. Like, I'm like, I need a goal. So I just signed up for a marathon about a month later. I was like, you know what? I can. Yeah, no, it was literally a month later. And, I tell this story all the time. I don't know if you probably heard it or not, but I mean, when I went out and ran that marathon, the last 10 miles of the race, when I'm running past the aid station, the volunteers have these wooden sticks and they have a clear gooey substance on the end of them. So I'm running past, I'm like, oh, there's got a caloric benefit. There's got to be calories or something. So I'm eating this substance. I'm eating and eating for the last 10 miles of the race. And not until after my friends start making fun of me after I finished, I had been eating Vaseline for 10 miles. And that's how I was. And I mean, I tell that story because when I say I didn't train, I had no clue what I was doing. I had no business being out there running that first marathon. But I learned what I call the placebo effect, the matter over mind effect. And I was able to find a way to get myself to the finish. It was a very empowering feeling. Like, despite feeling like a dumbass, I'm sitting there. I'm like, I didn't train. I ate Vaseline the whole way. And I ran a 4-hour marathon. Like, not bad. What if I actually trained, ate proper fuel, and had some sort of clue what I'm doing? Maybe I could do a little better. And so I signed up for another one and was like, okay, I'm 11 minutes faster, signed up for another one, 15 minutes faster, signed up for another one, a little bit faster. And I was like, okay, like, so like getting in the running just kind of came again, totally out of the blue to overcome an injury. And it came simultaneously when my business partner at Merrell had his daughter, Lucy, who's now my goddaughter, who had a very rare growth disorder and still deals with it to this day. It's a severe condition. And so running and starting to like find this new passion outside of Merrell and an outlet outside of those crazy 80-hour weeks, combined with seeing Lucy and firsthand what they were dealing with, it was like, I want to do something with Lucy. And I'm doing all this running stuff, which is cool. I'm like, let's take it up a notch. And so that's why I signed up to run the Sahara race, which was my first ultra in 2009, 150 miles across the Sahara, and raise money for the Magic Foundation and for Lucy. And again, kind of like looking back on that decision I made not to go abroad, it's definitely one of the best decisions I made in my life. And it was the decision that 98% of people I knew said was a horrible idea.
Right.
Just like Ford starting Capstone, terrible idea. You're never going to make it. Like running that race, everyone thought I was crazy. I was going to die. They didn't want me flying solo into a terrorist laden city, like all the reasons why behind it. And then it's 120 degrees and all this stuff out there. And, I used that as fuel. I took it really seriously and trained 9 months for that race. And I went out there. By the time I went out there, I felt like an army of supporters behind me, and went out and crushed it. And I finished 5th place and raised a bunch of money. And I was like, screw all you guys. Like, all you guys told me it wasn't a good idea. And then it was like, okay, that was my first ultra. So just like my first marathon, started running marathons, first ultra, kind of took that up a notch. And so the reason I tell that whole story is I'm at Merrell, I'm doing my day job. It's great. I love the people. I love the action. I'm doing well, but I'm starting to get into this other stuff, which is so much more rewarding. Right. It's challenging me physically, emotionally, spiritually in a way that I've never been challenged before. I'm able to use it to give a voice to certain causes or a platform to certain people, which was incredibly powerful. I'm getting to travel the world. I'm getting to meet all these amazing people from all these different countries. And so like that started becoming what I loved most. And I started feeling a little unfulfilled here, even though that was affording me the opportunity to do this. I don't, if that makes sense.
Right.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that in a kind of a nutshell, I mean, there's a lot more to unpack around that, but in a nutshell, that's kind of how my passions and my purpose and sort of everything in my life kind of shifted. And so, you know, I decided to leave Merrell. I had a long distance relationship at the time, took a job with another company, moved to Texas for a year and was hoping that, you know, the relationship and settling down and still being the same industry, but a new company would kind of give me enough to still like really want to be there longer. And it didn't. It didn't. It just kind of proved the point even a little more. And so I was there for a year. And then I was like, I moved to California. After that first trip, that first marathon, I had fallen in love with San Diego. I had a lot of people out here. I'd done well at Merrell. And I was like, you know what? After living in the Northeast my whole life, I'd like to go somewhere where I can train harder, weather's better. You know, I can kind of do some more entrepreneurial stuff. And so I then moved out to California like 6 years ago. So, I mean, that's kind of like the crux of like the Merrell and then like coming out here and kind of starting doing stuff on my own.
What are you doing now in business?
Yeah. So a lot of different things, but, you know, basically the way I've tried to set it up is, you know, I want to have as much time as possible to do things that light me up. You know, I always say relationships and experiences, doing meaningful things with people I love. I mean, that's really how I want to kind of spend all my time. So from a business perspective, I'm really just investing, starting and buying into companies where I'm trying to build a portfolio essentially of cash flowing investments, long-term investments, things of that nature where, you know, I don't have to do a lot of day-to-day stuff. I mean, I do a lot of public speaking. I have my F45 studios, which has been a big passion of mine, where I'm able to kind of give back what I've done in the running community to a number of other people and have them kind of experience those life-altering changes that I have through physical fitness. And so I spend a lot of time, especially with COVID, probably more time than I planned on, getting these businesses over the hump. You know, don't make a ton of money doing this, but it's incredibly rewarding. And I've built a community out here in San Diego that I've never had in my life, even all my years at Merrell, which I'm really proud of. But end of the day, I'm an entrepreneur. I look for different business opportunities, buy and sell companies, run races, raise money for charity, do speeches, just kind of all the above. You know, there's no, you know, normal day. There's no normal week. It's just that's sort of where I'm at.
You kind of passed over this and touched on it lightly, but if you just listen to your story, right, it sounds like it's stress-free lifestyle, which is not the case. I know that personally that's not the case at all. But like over the last, you know, you have F45 and we all know that like COVID shut down businesses, gyms suffered, restaurants suffered.
Especially out in California.
Yeah, exactly. So what were some of the biggest challenges you faced?
Last year, last year was very, very hard on me. And, you know, I don't like to hammer too much on the negative stuff, but yeah, I mean, when I moved out here, I made a pretty big investment into a portfolio of restaurants, which were annihilated and all shut down last year. And many of them haven't reopened. You know, I just gotten 3 F45s smoked last year. One of them we had to shut down permanently. You know, my 2 big races that I had planned for last year, Badwater and then climbing Kilimanjaro, which were my 2 things that light me up, the things I'm like most excited about, were shut off last year. You know, I was out here 3,000 miles away from all my closest friends and family. You know, girlfriend at the time went home to be with her family during COVID. So I was very alone last year. It was very tough financially. I was incredibly stressed out. So, you know, you're laying people off. You're trying to pay your employees, but meanwhile, like you're looking at your bank account just getting absolutely depleted and debts racking up. And is this landlord going to collect? Are they going to be able to collect? At 45, from a franchise perspective, they're coming after you. You owe royalties, you owe this, you owe that. And it was really scary for a while. I'm not going to lie. And mentally, I was in a very dark place for 3 to 6 months last year. And physically, I was not in great condition. I had some nagging injuries on top of just being shut down. I mean, I think that's what COVID, Brian said this, we've talked about it a couple of times. Any weaknesses you have in your life, COVID will expose. You know, I really feel that. Strengths or weaknesses, right? Bonds you have with your relationship, your business or not. And a lot of those kind of weaknesses were exposed. And I was in a pretty depressed place for most of the year. And, you know, even to this day now, I mean, I was in the best shape of my life beginning of last year. And I worked hard to drop 15 pounds for Badwater this year and whatnot, but I haven't got back to where I was last year. The pandemic took a lot out of me. And, you know, fortunately, these businesses are still alive, but they're way behind where they should be. And it's been a super challenge and been very, very stressful financially. So yeah, it has not been easy. California, politics, gyms, restaurants, things of that nature. I mean, we got smoked about as much as anyone.
What did you do during that time? Because I know you got pretty entrepreneurial again with F45 and like finding space outside to kind of skirt.
Yeah. So, I mean, that was the one thing that saved us here. So when we got shut down like 2.5 months, like completely. And then we were allowed to reopen. That ended up being like 2 weeks. And they're like, you got to go outdoors. So a good relationship with the restaurant group that runs the Hard Rock, and reached out to them immediately because they have this awesome 8,000 square foot turf roof deck where they usually do concerts and wedding venues and big parties and stuff. And obviously all that business was shut down. So it's like, well, is there any way we can kind of work together, you know, and we can do our classes over there. We'll transport the equipment across town. It'll be good. And then, you know, we can, you know, buy some food there or drinks to, you know, even at the time we couldn't hang out, but we could at least take away or do whatever. We can help support your business. You guys can give us a home. It'll allow us to kind of stay in business because the virtual stuff, I mean, it only works a little. For our model, it's like, that's not what it's all about. It's about being with other people and social and community. So like the virtual stuff it wasn't going to work for us. And so, yeah, we ended up putting that deal together within the first week. And I mean, that really saved our business here. As at that point, people were looking, people understand like the most important way to fight COVID is to be healthy. Right. Like it's to be active, it's to be healthy, it's to be in shape, it's not be overweight, all those things. And so most people were looking for places to work out, but there were no options, especially when you're downtown in California. When we get shut down, Padres are shut down. There's no games. There's no concerts. I mean, right now we're back. There's an event every night at Petco. It's awesome. Last year, it was desolate. I mean, it was a ghost town overridden by homeless people. Right. And you just did not want to be here. And so it was a very ugly place to be. And the Hard Rock gave us some light for 9 months to have a home to go over there. And we're forever grateful. And we still have a great relationship with those guys. We're going over to, you know, we still do, you know, once every month or two, we'll do a class out there and then we'll all hang out at the pool after and spend all our hard-earned money there and thank those guys. I mean, we owe them forever. So, I mean, that was one example, and everyone just kind of getting creative, trying to figure out solutions outside the box to stay in business. Cause like no one knew what the hell was going on.
Right. I mean, I think that's all part of the community that you built and people stayed part of F45 and followed you and probably gained more members. I mean, we really did through last summer and through the fall when we were over there, we did. And then we got shut back down completely again for a while. And then at that point, like end of the year, I mean, we lost probably half our membership base just because it was a complete shutdown. We couldn't even do that. And it's, you know, and then now it's the winter, even though it's not cold here, it's dark early. It just wasn't working over there. So then, so we had to kind of start from scratch, like multiple times, you know, it's a tough business. I mean, I think now that I even look at it, I mean, there's 14 F45s in San Diego County, as well as every other fitness concept on the planet. Right. And you're talking about a relatively low margin business with super high competition. You got to be really good at what you do to survive or thrive in this business. If I was to do it again, I'd much rather open an F45 in a place in the East Coast or somewhere where people don't know about it as well, because it's so innovative. It's so good. But here it's like,
there's a million concepts out there. So it's just like sales and marketing, customer experience, knowing, building your community, things like that. I mean, you got to be a 10 out of 10 on it, or you're just not going to make it. And we have been. So I'm proud of the work we've done here, but it has been one of the harder things I've ever done in my life. That's for sure.
Do you feel like those businesses are back to where they were before COVID, or are you still climbing?
I mean, here we're best we've ever been.
Okay.
From a restaurant perspective, some are doing well, some are not doing so well.
Right.
And there's a lot of variables to that when it comes into location and demographic and things of that nature and different brand names and stuff like that. So, but here we're doing fantastic. And it's been the summer. We get back to the fall. There's a lot of people that are on pause that are coming back from traveling because everyone wants to get out now. I mean, that's like the one thing. Everyone's just itching. So downtown, even versus June, when you guys are here, it's popping now. So we're in a pretty good position to, every month we're setting record numbers.
That's awesome. Let's talk passion projects now. So I think a lot of our database, a lot of our clients, a lot of people we know probably found out about you through what you were most recently doing and raising funds for Badlands and for that race. So you want to give us some Badwater, sorry.
Yeah. Which was awesome. And not to cut you off, man. Thank you guys for all the support and everything. It was incredible. We're actually, this is, you want to talk about passion part. We're going to be delivering the keys to Ben Holmes for his new home, September 25th.
That's awesome.
So it's like the construction of his house was already underway, but the $40K roughly that we raised, is basically getting it over the hump. It's going to be finished. We're going to go out. We're going to help landscape around the house and then literally deliver the house to him. So all you guys, thank you so much. I mean, that's friggin' making a difference, right?
Yeah.
So for everybody who's listening, just give some backstory, some context.
Yeah. So I mean, and this was, Ford and the whole team when we decided kind of last minute that Ford was going to come crew and, we were going to do something jointly as a fundraiser around the Badwater race. Ford and the team kind of vetted a number of charities. We felt really good about Homes for Our Troops. And I mean, they have an amazing track record. They've delivered now something since 2005, 215 houses at no cost to the vet, to warriors that have come home with significant physical injuries. Because, I mean, as you guys know, from a real estate perspective, I mean, if you're missing a limb or you're in a wheelchair, I mean, you need a lot of modifications to your house, to the height of counters, to the size of the bathroom, things of that nature, to be able to live a normal quality of life. And it's his stories. And I mean, he lost a leg in 2011 in Afghanistan, which is absolutely horrific. And the thing that really hits me because I talk to a lot of these guys and, obviously I wasn't there, but reiterating what they say through their eyes and my understanding is when you go to war, when you go to Afghanistan, when you're going to an area like that, you go prepared to die or prepared to come home to your family and live. You don't come home prepared for this middle state of a new norm where you're missing a limb, right. Or you watch children shot to death or bombs kill your buddies or whatnot, or being significantly effed up either physically or mentally. And that's the tragedy with, because for every one person we lose, 20 plus are wounded. And in a lot of the cases, like I was just in Kilimanjaro with 4 amputees, 3 of them were double amputees, and you never prepare for that. So Ben comes back missing a leg and, he's got a wife and 4 kids. And he's trying to pick up the pieces and relive his life. And a big part of what Homes for Our Troops is doing in this house is going to allow him the greatest opportunity for that new life, having an enjoyable quality life, being able to be around his kids. So it's freaking amazing. And he volunteered to go put his life on the line for us. So that's why I'm such a big proponent of doing that for our vets. And it means so much to them. He is so appreciative, so humble, so thankful. And I mean, to be able to do this with Capstone Cares, and obviously mention, Centrix too, and to help deliver this house for a true American hero. I mean, it doesn't get better than that. So for everyone on here that donated, for the whole team, back office, Desiree and Jacqueline and everyone did an absolutely outstanding job. And we're so proud and honored to be a part of it. And despite not the race going the way I would have ever intended it going. The outcome was a massive success.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there a way for people to still donate and still help out? A link that
I think the link is still available.
Okay.
I'm not 100% certain on that. I know we're delivering 100% of the funds raised to them, and that's going straight there. And I think that's actually already been done. So, I mean, you can always donate to support Homes for Our Troops. Maybe it's something we at Capstone do with them every year or something like that. I know that's an area of focus for Ford. And I know we've talked about doing more on the nonprofit front and expanding that part of our business. So, maybe that's something we all kind of work on together a little bit more in the future.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. And I mean, anything for that cause or similar causes, it typically we can rally a lot of support in our world.
Yeah. I mean, look at what these guys are going through in Afghanistan right now. Yeah. I mean, can you imagine? Yeah. Can you imagine if a family member or a friend of yours was over there?
I'm sure Ben has some thoughts too about what's going on over there. We can talk about
I know. I can't wait. I can't wait to meet him. I mean, I know it's probably a challenge for you or for anyone else, but it's on September 25th. It's in Escondido. It's about an hour north of San Diego. So maybe if there happens to be a listener on here from Southern California that would like to be there to meet Ben, shake his hand, and be a part of the ceremony, would love to have you.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So tell us about Kilimanjaro, everything about that. And that was the next most recent thing that you've done, right? And also,
I mean, I just got back last Sunday, so it's really recent. Amazing. So that was another veteran charity I was working with called Sheepdog. They're out of Northwest Arkansas, and their whole mission is get off the couch, right? Because in this case where, we talk about someone comes home missing a limb or something of that nature, a lot of time they feel like when they were overseas fighting for the country, they were an asset. They were an asset to the United States. And now they come home, they're missing a leg, they don't have a job, and they're sitting on the couch, not doing anything with their lives. And they feel like they're a liability. Hear that all the time. And that's how depressed and they get isolated. And that's when suicidal ideations can potentially creep in. And that's a dangerous cycle. So Sheepdog is a nonprofit out there that pushes get off the couch and helps put on events. This was the biggest event by far, climbing Kilimanjaro with 12 guys. But I mean, it could be as simple as, going on a hunt or going fishing or doing something with other veterans and other people that creates purpose and gets the engines fired up again, restart and get that spark back in your life. Sometimes you just need something big outside of your comfort zone to kind of do that, to kind of get going again. And so that's a big part of what this climb was for these four guys. We had Travis Strong there, who's 175-pound guy. Neck, arms, shoulders, just an absolute beast of a man, missing legs, no prosthetics. So only 28 inches tall. So he's out there doing the whole thing on his hands, literally like this the whole way. And then on his knuckles. And then when his knuckles bled through on the other side, absolutely insane. And then we had Noah Galloway out there. Noah was the first, amputee on the cover of Men's Health magazine. So he lost an arm and a leg overseas, came back, turned his life around after being an alcoholic, got into doing Tough Mudders and Spartan races, became like one of the top guys in the world at doing that, gets on the cover of Men's Health magazine. Then he gets invited to Dancing with the Stars, finishes third place. So, a guy that's got a lot of natural talent as an athlete and just an absolute beast. So he was there. Scott West was there, missing 2 legs, 2 prosthetics. And then a guy named Sebastian Gallegos, he was missing an arm. And so to be around those 4 guys and the rest of the team and watching them attempt to scale a 19,000 plus foot mountain. I've never seen anything like it in my life. Like, I will never forget it. Anytime I feel myself just getting to be a little bit of a baby or a wimp or something, man, I look at Travis out there freaking grinding. It's like, what do I have to complain about? Yeah. It was just an amazing experience. Unfortunately, Travis didn't get to the top, and Noah got turned around about 1,000 feet from the summit. He had severe altitude sickness. The other 2 guys made it up. But what we did out there as a team was one of the best things I've ever done in my life and been a part of. It was so special. It's hard to even explain it or put it in words. We're hopefully going to have a film coming out on it. We had a crew out there shooting it, and it was just I mean, again, whatever it takes, it puts everything in perspective, and not just seeing those guys, but then the porters, right? You got these porters. A lot of these guys are in their 60s and they've been doing this their whole lives, and they carry 50 pounds of gear from camp to camp on their heads. And these guys do it for a couple dollars a day. Wow. Couple dollars a day. And that's what they're out there doing for work. And they are so you give them a $5 tip and it's like you've rocked their world. And just the perspective of this entire trip, because that's the way the majority of the world lives. The stuff that we take for granted in America, the fact that you can go out and buy a $5 cup of coffee at Starbucks whenever you want, the little things like that, the majority of the rest of the world doesn't have access to. And I think right now we need a little bit more of that appreciation and gratitude in our country than the shit that we're bitching about left and right and tearing each other down, because we're going to rip ourselves apart from the inside out.
Yeah,
we already are.
I hear you. So obviously you sound, I mean, just by that statement, you're obviously very patriotic, and just by your actions as well. You know, how much of that came from being in, a family that was providing public service, in DC, and how much of that is just from, how much is nature versus nurture, I guess?
Yeah. I think it's probably 50-50. I mean, I definitely witnessed it firsthand, but when you're a kid, you don't understand the scope of things.
Yeah.
Right. And you're in the moment. You don't have time to look back and reflect. Like, you never look back and reflect when you're 18, man, back when I was 10, you don't, yeah. No one does that. Right.
Yeah.
But now, I mean, just turning 40 and having had a lot of life experiences, that's definitely a part of it. But I mean, I've been to 42 countries now, and most of them are third world countries. I'd rather go to a place like Tanzania and Kenya. I mean, I'll tell you what was one of the coolest things of the trip, and people think I'm absolutely nuts, but the last night, the guys all invited us out to go to a local bar/club in, Tanzania. We were in Moshi, and I thought we were going to have a group of us going out, and it was just me. And I'm like, last night of my trip, relationships and experiences, I don't want to miss this. So they take me out and we go to this club, and, music stops and every eye's on you. There's 300 people there and you're the one white guy. And you're like, wow, this is how a lot of people in America probably feel all the time. And you're sitting there and you're looking at your wallet, you're looking around, your awareness, just making sure everything's okay. And then, you hang there for an hour, and then next thing you know, you're talking to people are coming up to you, even though you don't speak the same language. You connect, non-verbally or whatever, or have a beer together or whatever. And it was honestly an amazing night. I was out for 6 hours and we went to multiple places, and I never felt uncomfortable. I felt at home, but it's that perspective changing stuff. So when I go to nights like that and you see, how the people are dressed, the amount of money they have, where they're coming, you just, man, you're so lucky. Yeah. So we're so blessed. And it's not like we don't deserve it. I mean, everyone in here, we work our asses off. We worked hard, but we also have opportunities that no one else has. Absolutely. And it's just, we forget that at times, and it's upsetting. And so for me, a lot of the traveling I do, because I forget it at times. And then I go on a trip like this and it smacks me back in the face, and you say, never forget that again, and I try and pass that on, and it's hard to pass it on when you haven't experienced it. But that feeling I had walking in there and being like, wow, man, I'm definitely the minority now. And if something goes wrong, I got no one. My whole life, I've always had people around me, and now here, you're on your own. But I mean, it changes things. And so I think, to get back and answer your question, it's probably a little more of that, but it's also the fact that I've done that as an adult, and I understand a little more about how the world works. And so I can have more of a perspective now at 40 than I could, being raised up to, 18 with my parents.
So 42 countries, and you were just at the beginning of your story when you were telling us you had not been out of the country in 2002. So you've hit 42 countries in 19 years.
Mm-hmm.
Impressive. That's impressive.
It's a lot. And I always try and say, never go back to the same place twice. But that was my second time at Kilimanjaro and being out in Tanzania. And I'd go back there every year. I mean, that's how special that place is.
I've asked you this question before, and it relates to Kilimanjaro, any of these other physical challenges. Obviously, you can prepare, you can train. You did 9 months for your first ultra, right? But when you're in it, like, what drives you to keep pushing through? Because
it's a great question. You know, I've answered this a number of different ways over time. I mean, the principle behind it's the same, but my boy, Jesse Itzler, he's so damn good at coining everything. It pisses me off because I've been saying this for 10 years and then he coins something. And I'm like, why did I not think of that a long time ago? But he always says, remember tomorrow. He says, remember tomorrow. And that encapsulates everything of running an ultra. And that could be a race, that could be a business, that could be a relationship that you want to make work, like whatever. Remember tomorrow. And what he means by that is, you know, right now you're suffering. Right now you want to quit. Right now, every bone in your body is saying, throw in the towel. But how are you going to feel about electing to pull the ripcord a week from now, 2 weeks from now, a month from now, when you've recovered and you feel better? And you sit there and you have that regret in your mind saying, man, I feel good now. I would do anything to go back to that moment. Yeah, I was tired. I was hurt. I had this going on, but I friggin' quit. And I can never go back and change that action. And that's what does it. Like, you stay in that moment and you know, and that relates to our vets. I mean, they pull a ripcord on a mountain in Afghanistan. It means their life. And I dealt with that, man, on the run across America when I was injured with 2,800 miles to go. That was the only thing that kept me going was that regret. One opportunity. You don't get a redo. I'm not going to get a redo to run across America the second time with all these people that were behind us in 18 months of planning and everyone that had taken time off and stuff. Never going to get a redo. And so it's that trying to keep that perspective into the future. And then it's like, okay, so then what do you do? And then it's like compartmentalize, right? It's like when you have too much on your plate, or the bags are piling up and you can't make decisions and you have too much going on. So I always say compartmentalize, focus on the next step, the next mile, the next hour, the next day. And then, you know, for running across America, the next state, but start small, build confidence, small wins. You know, so that's kind of all the way is like when you run these ultras, I mean, it's a roller coaster the entire way. There's going to be moments where at mile 60, you feel invincible. At mile 70, you want to put a bullet in your head. At mile 80, you know, you feel like you're Usain Bolt. Mile 85, you're throwing up or you're passed out on the side of the road. And it's like, how do you deal with these, you know, highs and lows and continue to get there? And so, yeah, I mean, those are a few of the things that I use, that I go to. You know, it's a lot.
Would you say that it's obviously a huge physical feat to do any of these things? And yes, you did run across America. Like, we didn't touch on that one.
Yeah.
And that was another fundraiser for veterans. Yeah. Like, awesome thing that you've done. But would you say it's more of a physical challenge for you or more of a mental challenge?
It's both. I mean, a lot of people just say, oh, it's all mental, you know, it's like, I mean, it's definitely not all mental. I mean, what happened to me in Badwater and what's happened to me, I mean, I've had multiple surgeries from injuries I've sustained in doing these races. So, I mean, there is a big physical component to it too. I guess the best way to answer it was you got to have the mental strength to push yourself hard enough to train, to get your body in a condition where it can potentially absorb the punishment that you're going to put it through during race day. And then on race day, yes, it is mostly mental. Now, when you have chafage to the point where you look like a burn victim, you know, in your crotch, or you fall on black ice and sustain a triple hernia, or you blow your ankle out to the point where it needs reconstruction in metal. Like, there's things that happen, you know, we're in Badwater where like it's 120 degrees out and I'm shivering with a blanket on me because my body is borderline going into shock, you know, things of that nature. Yeah, that's physical, right? Yeah. But I mean, those are some of the things you deal with. And some of those things I've still gotten to finish lines on, and one or two I haven't. So, I mean, it's definitely a combination of both. I mean, in a lot of ways, it's definitely more mental because, again, you can always go farther than you think you can, and you can always find a way to do that. Now, are you willing to suffer that much? Are you willing to go to a place that, quite frankly, is really scary, that most people don't know exists? I mean, maybe not. But but the physical component, I'm not going to belittle that, because these things take a toll on your body, and you feel them. You feel them at the time, you feel them after the time, probably feel them for the rest of your life, for sure.
Yeah, I would imagine. So what's next for you? What passion project, racing, business? What's next?
I don't know. Maybe getting married. Maybe getting married.
Oh, is that on the horizon?
Well, we just, I said we're moving, so we're moving in together now, and things are serious. So,
congratulations.
I mean, that's one area, and, I'll be brutally honest, I've done a lot of things, and like you said, all this traveling and businesses and races stuff. And I've never fully prioritized that part of my life. I also don't think I necessarily had the right one, but that's always been sort of in the back.
Yeah. And,
for me, that, at this time in my life, I want to have kids and want to have a family. And so, I'm not getting any younger. So that's definitely something, I'm prioritizing here going forward. Considering the fact that I just came off Badwater and I just came off Kilimanjaro and everything, I don't have anything big locked down certainly yet. There's a couple things we're talking about. So I don't want to necessarily let the cat out of the bag on anything, but the wheels are definitely in motion on things. But, just with some of my investments, some of my things, like with this F45, the restaurant, some of my portfolio, I want to get these things where I feel like I can lay off the gas a little more before I kind of dive into too many other new things. Because like I said, we're a little farther behind where I'd like to be at this point in time. And I want to make sure I don't lose focus on these couple things I'm working on right now. I want to put some big wins on the board here. And then I can kind of, okay, let's focus on new things. I mean, I don't have anything massive right now is the answer, but the wheels are in motion on right now. Yeah. I don't like to sit still, but moving the relation and some stuff I do have some balls in the air. Right. But, nothing. I would love for us all to talk about ways to do more with Capstone Cares. Like I said, I think that would be super cool, right? I mean, we're a family. We're passionate about helping people. Yeah. I'd love for us to find some ways to do more stuff there, whether it's an annual event or, an annual gala, or we do more physical fitness type things, races, get more people, the whole team involved. That's definitely something I'd love to spend some time on discussing going forward.
That probably will progress. I mean, this was successful.
I talked to Ford because we kind of jammed it together at the 11th hour.
Yeah.
And I know in this business, people do things last minute. I get that. I'm a sense of urgency guy. If the timeline's not coming close, my eyes not on the prize. But I mean, if we actually spend a little more time laying the foundation, telling the story, getting it out there a little more, we could do so much more.
Well, when it becomes an initiative for this firm, it gets done, Yeah. So when this was a one-off basically. And if it became an initiative, it would grow and get accomplished.
100%.
Yeah,
100%.
Totally.
And I think that relays into all of our clients that we know. And if it matters to us, a lot of them, it matters to them too. And so you just grow that, that network.
Yeah. I mean, let me throw the ball back at you. I mean, where would you kind of like to see Capstone sort of, devote more time or invest more resources or whatnot, going forward over the next, call it, 3 to 5 years?
You want to go?
Putting you guys on the spot. There we go.
Yeah. I mean, Texas is an area Texas is a market we probably need to be in. And, now it's a hole, it's a hole. We filled a hole in Georgia, Atlanta. We needed to be in Atlanta based on where our other offices are. And we've filled that hole. And now with Oklahoma and Denver, we need to be in Texas.
Absolutely.
Verticals. Phoenix. Yeah. Phoenix. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And getting up into DC and continuing. I mean, we now have Jacksonville, building out, some of these smaller offices and just continuing to take market share, I think is one of the most important things. And that's really been a strategic, initiative from day one is let's build out a good team in Charlotte. All right. Yep. We have that. We're taking market share. Let's continue to invest. Now we got Tampa. Let's build that. And just day after day, grinding it out to build those offices out. I don't think there's any just one person you can hire or
right.
You can throw money at anyone right now and people will jump ship, but they're mercenary and they're not going to understand the culture and they're not going to stay.
Right.
They're going to go to the next ship when it
and
throws some dollars at them.
Mike Mosier has added a ton of value to the firm because the hires he's made, like I'm hired a bunch of guys that just didn't work out because I found that I'm not very good at hiring people. And some of it's circumstantial, but I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
Mike has made hires where he sees it. And as soon as he identifies it, he's like a dog on a bone, and he rallies internal support for that decision. And he's done it with me a couple of times now, where we've hired 2 guys in the last year where, really 3, where Mike talked to him and he called me. He's like, I need you to talk to this guy. I really think he's a good fit. And I think it's perfect for what you guys are looking for. And we did that with Nasser here in Tampa. We added Christian as an analyst, and he's really come into form in the last 6 months. And then we just hired Cameron in Jacksonville. And he's
great. I spent a ton of time with him out here. Yeah, he's fantastic. Yep.
Yeah. And so, having that now where like it's a role. Right. And it's a role, and it's no coincidence that the firm has grown exponentially since Mike came aboard. And so, continuing that expansion by making selective hires and selective market decisions based on the human capital and not because we want to be somewhere, I think has served us well. And that's how we, just continuing that, aligning it with strategic market, areas that we want to be in.
Yeah, it's great. Makes total sense.
I think that we've done a really good job at the people side of things, but then the technology side, we've made such a big push into that. And I think, that's the way forward is technology, right? How do we take antiquated real estate business and bring it into, I wouldn't even say we're in like the 21st century with it. It's still like, there's not a lot of technology. So how do you figure that out and making a big push into that? Like we have a database, we have a great database that I'd put against anybody else's out there, right? Any of our competitors, RCM, put them against them. It's the same. We have relationships. So it's how do we differentiate ourselves and make ourselves even better? Because we don't like to compare ourselves to this group because they're good at this. We want to be the best at everything that we're setting out to do. Right. And I think that is the overall, it's not one of our core values that we talk about, but that's the overall attitude of every broker at Capstone. Yep. And I think it's just figuring out exactly what that is. Let's take a quick break and then we'll be back with George.
Multifamily Method is powered by Capstone Companies, the largest privately owned multifamily investment sales brokerage nationwide. Capstone Companies provides dedicated coverage to both primary and secondary markets throughout the Southeast, Mid-Atlantic, and Midwest regions of the United States. Whether buying, selling, or refinancing, Capstone Companies is here to help. Simply put, Capstone is expertise, experience, extra mile. If you're interested in having Capstone provide a complimentary opinion of value on your multifamily asset, please visit us at capstone-companies.com.
Welcome back to the Multifamily Method. We're here with George Chmiel, founding partner and investor of Capstone. So George, just continuing our conversation, I don't think you have a clear-cut answer for this, but I guess we typically ask this question of our guests. So what is a typical day look like for you, or what does your ideal day look like for you if there's not a typical day?
Oh, my ideal day? I would wake up, I would walk the dog, I would go for a run, I would take an F45 class, I'd hang out with a bunch of my members, I'd get lunch, I'd go hit golf balls, probably make a few phone calls, talk about some business opportunities, and be at happy hour at 5 o'clock.
And how closely does that resemble to most of your normal days?
I mean, again, there's no such thing as a normal day. I work out every day. I mean, whether it's running F45 or both, I mean, that's very important to me. I take care of the dog a lot. I always have different investment things that I'm working on. I mean, there's always more work you can do, right? When you own companies, there's always something to do. So it's just like, what are you focused on doing? Now, if I have a speaking engagement or a race coming up, or I'm doing a fundraise for charity, like that's top of priority, right? So I'm working on my speech, or I'm reaching out to donors, or, like before Badwater, like I'm doing 100 miles a week of running. Like that's focus. If I don't have one of those big things on the radar, I'm in here grinding with my F45. I'm following up on Capstone stuff. I'm, looking at different investment opportunities. Like I'm doing whatever. I'm connecting with people. I'm talking to people. So I mean, that's kind of it in a nutshell. I mean, I know that's probably not the best response, but I prioritize doing things that light me up inside, that I'm passionate for, that have hopefully some sort of higher purpose. And if they don't really check those boxes, I don't really try and waste my time on them. I mean, that's kind of where I'm at my life. Like I don't try and do a lot of mundane, busy work that, like, quite frankly, isn't moving the needle or doesn't excite me. And so obviously you have to do those things at times, but, and then obviously like spending time with my girlfriend and things of that nature. So I don't know. I don't know if that's a good answer or not.
No, that's a perfect answer. I mean, I think that a lot of people work really hard to get where you are.
Yeah, that's right.
You've done it at a young age.
Yeah. Yep.
It's impressive. What are some of the most significant successes you've had to date? I know we've talked about a lot through this conversation, but what would you qualify yourself as some of the most significant ones?
I mean, I would say probably my biggest success is just the amount of people in my life that I have that I think I could call, that if I needed something would drop everything and be there for me. Like close, meaningful, authentic relationships that I've had over years and years and years. Nothing means more to me than that. And I think people understand, like with me, and in a lot of ways, kind of like with Ford, that's how we connect, is like what you see is what you get. We'll screw up. We're not going to get everything right. But where you stand with us, we have a lot of heart. We care about people. We mean what we say and say what we mean. And that to me, by far and away, is what I'd want to take to the grave before anything else. In terms of like actual like check successes, the coolest thing that happened to me at Merrell was winning the David Brady Award. That was they give it out. Out of 30,000 employees, they give a couple out a year to the employee that best represents success to the client and the community. And David was lost in 9/11, and he was a family man. He had 4 kids. He did a lot in the community. And I won that award in 2010 and got the chance to meet his family. Wow. And that was a pretty special thing. I was the youngest person ever to win that award. I was 29. Not something I really talk about or brag, but that meant a lot, and to meet his family. And 9/11 impacted me a lot. BC lost 22 alumni that day, and I was in college at the time, so I was close by, and obviously, spent a lot of time in New York. So 9/11 is one that's always close, and to have lost David that day and then win an award named after him years after the fact was pretty special. So that was a big one. In terms of fundraising, I've raised over $500,000 myself for charity. And I don't have, $1 billion donors, or, I don't come from like massive where I'm getting, 7-figure checks or humongous checks. It's a lot of small checks over a lot of years. And that one means a lot to me, because when, I'm all said and done, that's what leaves a legacy, and all the stuff that I've done, there's been a higher purpose, and it's helped other people. Obviously like Capstone and F45 and Factor was one of my big investments, and something that I worked with them for a number of years. And we just had a big exit end of last year to HelloFresh. And that was awesome, because that was a very tough business. Talk about food, no barriers to entry, super competitive, super low margin, and everyone's doing it. And, to grind through that after a while and get an exit in that space was massive. That was one. Obviously all my races, and running across America, and there's a lot of good stuff, but I don't, there's been a lot of losses too, and a lot of on both sides. So, I don't like to sit and really talk about my wins, but there's been some good stuff.
I know. And you mentioned this about your dad being a very humble man and not liking to speak about his successes and wins. I know it takes a lot for you to do that too, because I know you personally, and you you like to be the one asking about other people. So
yeah, no, for sure.
That. And it's, it's awesome to hear, because otherwise a lot of people wouldn't know, like, who is George. So,
yeah, I mean, I'd rather brag about Ford, and if he wants to brag about me, that's fine. That's the way we all do it. Hopefully one day we're both bragging about the Detroit Lions. Probably not in our lifetime.
Probably not.
You being on this is Ford's way of making sure we brag about you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it, man. It's just been fun to be in the game, man, to be in the arena. And, Badwater, has been a dream of mine and continue to will be for 13 years. And honestly, what happened out there was, I'd run that race 100 times and that would happen once. And it's, it's crushing. I want to talk about that too. You asked me, that's one that like, I still think about. Thank God I had Kilimanjaro right after it. So I was able to kind of get over it quickly, but like, that's still, it burns me to this day. I know I can finish that race. I've finished, but we need to go back to the drawing board. I need to make some changes. Particularly to my nutritional plan and some other stuff, and go back and get it done. So they're not just all wins, right? There's losses too. And, but you're in the arena, you're in the game, you're relevant. That was one thing I think one of the reasons, I forgot, that was a great lesson he taught me is like, be relevant. What you do, have relevance in your life. And I think that's one thing he loves so much about being in the bureau and doing work that impacted so many people. He was very relevant. He had access to confidential information, was getting polygraphed, couldn't even talk about the work he was doing. But, behind the scenes, he's saving lives. And the work that you guys are doing, the stuff that we're all, it creates relevance. It creates relationships. You're important to other people. And I think that's so critical in life.
What's the future hold for George over the next 5 to 10 years? Where do you see yourself at 45?
Honestly, man, living in the moment, hopefully married with a family, and, hopefully we can have a couple more nice exits, and then, don't have to grind so hard and can just kind of focus 100% solely on other things. But I'm not going to sit idle. I'm not going to sit still. So, it's just, when the right opportunities come up. I've never been someone that tries to look too far out in the future, and I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I just know we have a finite amount of time here, and I like to make the most of it. I don't know how long I'll be on this planet, but I like to live in the present, make the most out of each and every day, and surround myself with great people. And so, 5-10 years from now, I don't know. It's interesting, right? Because I was talking to someone about this recently, and when it's like when you get married in your 20s, right? You have like everyone that goes to your wedding. Mostly there's like a lot of high school and college friends, right? And you think like they're your buddies forever. And then like you grow, you expand, maybe you have a family, you have kids, and then you have a whole new circle of people that enter your life. And maybe those college people aren't as important anymore. And if you would have got married 5 or 10 years later, they wouldn't be at your wedding. And so the reason I think is it's like, and that's okay. Not everyone's meant to be in your life forever. And it's okay. I think a lot of people get hung up on that. I know I do at times because I want to maintain relationships with everyone. Like so many great relationships at Merrell. I covered 1,800 financial advisors and I keep in touch with maybe 10 or 15 of them now. And I miss so many of those guys, but then I have a whole new group of people in my life now. So I think it's hard to 5-10 years because I'm like, who are the people? What are we going to be doing? What's the common? So it's hard for me to kind of answer that question.
No, that's fair.
Yeah.
Let's hit some rapid fire questions. Jad, you want to lead it off?
Okay.
All right. What is the best book you've ever read that impacted you?
Oh, probably Can't Hurt Me. That's Goggins' recent one. I listen to that or at least touch on it every time I'm kind of heading to a race. It just gets me in the mindset. He's again, like Itzler and like few of the guys, you see a lot of these influencers. I'm not going to name any names, but they present a version of themselves, which is so fake and so inauthentic. And I know like so many, I've seen it in person that it just grinds my gears. And then like, you see someone like Goggins who like the world adores and listens to, and he's like as real as it can be. And I just couldn't be more of a fan. He was supposed to be at Badwater. He never didn't show up for some reason. Maybe he got hurt in training or whatnot. I hope I get the chance to toe the line against him at just some time because, what that guy has been through and done, it's mind-boggling.
Yeah, no kidding. And you have raced Eisler, right, Jesse?
It's her, yeah, with Jesse. Yeah, we raced it. last man standing in 2019, which really cool race. It was a 4.2 mile loop through the woods in Maine, and you have to complete the loop every hour on the hour or you're out. So 12, 1, 2, you keep going. There's 100 and some people in the race, and you keep going until there's only one person left. And so you don't have to be the fastest person. You just got to keep going. And Jesse, someone that was in his 50s, all these things, talks a big game, like whatever. I'm like, all right, we're going to see what this guy's made of. And man, I shit you not, he was going toe to toe with everyone through the night. And I mean, he ended up finishing 5th in the race. I finished 3rd. I beat him by a couple laps. And then the top 2 guys they were going to keep going for like another 15 hours. I'm like, it's all right. I'm good with a podium. I'm going to hang out with Jesse and Sarah Blakely for a little bit and hang out and get to meet him, which was super cool. I'm so glad I did. But again, I was thoroughly, and he's slow. So like these loops were taking him 55, 56 minutes. So he comes into like essentially our camp area and he's got 4 minutes to recover before he's got to toe the line for the next loop. I'm like, he's never going to keep doing it. It's 5 loops, 10 loops, 15 loops, 20 loops. And now it's like, you've been through the day, you've been through the night. Now the sun's coming up, you're going through the morning. And the guy just kept coming back. It was so awesome. It was so awesome. We had such a great time together. And I mean, that guy earned my trust and my respect for life.
Very cool. What's a piece of advice that someone's given you to get you where you are today?
Yeah, I mean, the relevance thing that I just touched on was a big one. Oh God, I mean, there's so many things. God, I mean, I don't know which way you want me to take it. I mean, never negotiate your goals, I mean, is a big one. Journey over destination. I know that's kind of like a little bit of a cliche, but I talk about that a lot, like living in the moment, appreciating like what you have around you. I would say the biggest thing that maybe people haven't given me, but that I've taken from my business career, my running and everything is just being very careful with who you surround yourself with. Find your tribe, I guess, is if you want to put a tagline on it, but being very careful with who you surround yourself with. You have like you guys and Capstone or a lot of my people at Merrell that are just true blood, accountable, reliable, trustworthy people. And then you find the same amount of people out there that will scam you, will lie to you. They're shitty people and they're everywhere. And if you're a positive, optimistic, generous person, you can get taken advantage of. And that's definitely happened to me a number of times. Just happened to me recently with an employee here that I had to get rid of. I don't want to go into that whole story, but it's a very hurtful situation. And, I think one thing I'll say is I think you can bucket people by and large. Not many things are binary in life, but I think you can bucket people into givers or takers. Not all, there's some gray area, but I think by and large, you're either a giver or a taker. Surround yourself with givers. That's what I'll say.
Yeah. Cool. That's great advice right there.
That's awesome. I hesitate to even ask you the next question on this list because I don't think there's going to be, you know what I'm talking about, Alex. Like
I have no idea, man.
If there is anything, what would you change throughout your career that you've done or not done?
I mean, the big one I look back at is like leaving Merrell, right? And I'm like, I sit there and I'm like, well, if I didn't leave Merrell and I stayed there and I had I'd be a managing director, how much money you sit back and you'd be like, well, I'd be in Boston or New York. I'd do that. And where would you live? Would you be married? It's like you sit back there because like, I miss being surrounded by that caliber of person every day. Like I miss that's the one thing. Like I'm not meant to like work from home and I do it way too much. I'm not meant to be in a room by myself. I'm meant to be in a freaking Capstone office or a trading floor or, a Merrell branch office with, 100 advisors. Like that's what I miss is that environment, stimulating conversation, energy, because I'm not at my best when I'm just sitting at home, and you force yourself to kind of do things there. So, I mean, that's the one I kick around, but like, then again, I'm like, I live in the, arguably the best climate in the world. Like I have great people out here. I have an awesome girlfriend. Like, I'm like freaking living in San Diego. It's a dream. It's like every time I fly back home, I'm like, I was on vacation and now it's vacation, but this is every day. So it's like,
right.
So and that's why it's like, you make the best of your situation and you try not to look back. I mean, yeah, there's probably mistakes I've made and things I, have done or said or stupid shit or getting too drunk one night or, whatever, where you go back and be like, oh, I shouldn't have freaking done that. But like, that makes you who you are. and you move forward and you do the best with what you got. So, I mean, I don't think I would, change it. And, why would I want to?
If you never left Merrell, this would have been a lot less interesting podcast.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't be on the podcast, right?
That's the truth.
Yeah, and I'd probably be like, I think, in a lot of ways it humbled me in a lot of ways, because like I did really well as so early, and then like took some body blows, and it's like, oh shit, like this isn't that easy, and I'm not saying it was easy. It's like everything I did at Merrell, I didn't have an in, like having an FBI agent as a dad didn't like give me a connect or anything. Right. Like I grinded up hard. Like I'm not going to take that away from myself. Like I deserve credit for that, but I also like did really well at an early age. And, I probably didn't appreciate, what was happening at the time the way I do now looking back. And, right. and that's why I love that's why I love talking about these podcasts. It's probably great just having conversation, because you don't take enough time in life to reflect on the lessons you've learned. They're there, but by talking about them, like it really hardens them, like it irons it into your soul so you don't forget them, because when life goes by so fast, like sometimes you just things and then they just fly over your head. And that's why I love having these conversations. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. I think also like you talked about it earlier. It's like you weren't happy. You weren't at your happiest anymore.
I wasn't fulfilled.
Stimulated. Yeah. You weren't fulfilled. Like, so there's a give and take, and
right.
Who knows where you would have been.
Well, right. And it's a give and take, and it was,
you had stayed like,
yeah. And it wasn't like we had a great situation, and like, everyone, and the way it is at Capstone, where you've like been there for a while now, and everyone's are like, they're colleagues, but they're friends. And, you've already established yourself and your reputation and who you are and what you're made of. You don't need to prove yourself anymore. So it's like, but then maybe you lose a little bit of the fire and you become complacent.
Every day is a grind, though. We still have to prove ourselves. But all right, last one. What is one thing that you've yet to accomplish that you want to in the future? It could be personal or.
Well, I think I already hit on that, like having a family.
Yeah.
I think that's where like I've done a lot of things in life at a very early age, but that's one area of my life where pretty much everyone else has moved that path, and I'm pulling up the caboose on that one. So
hey, that's all right.
Even you got me, Chad. So
yeah,
that's
like I said, you still got time.
You're going to be my inspiration to be the old man, dude.
Yeah, it's all good, man. It's all good. Just be prepared for a lot of sleepless nights.
Yeah, well, that's one thing I'm I'm well accomplished in that area.
Yeah, you're 40, but you're not. You don't have 40.
No, that's right. So
you don't have
try not to. Got to stay young at heart.
You have like an 18-year-old.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for talking with us, George. Awesome, hearing about your past, present, and future, and we look forward to connecting on more Capstone Cares and George Chmiel, veteran pushed.
It's
been a lot of fun, George.
It's been great, man. Really appreciate it. Proud of what you guys are doing. Keep up the hard work, and I'm glad we're doing this now, and you guys are doing a great job. So, thanks so much, and it's great to spend this time with you guys.
Thank you for listening to Multifamily Method. If you enjoyed today's episode, please give us a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts. It helps our podcast get discovered by other savvy investors like yourself. Subscribe to Multifamily Method for free on your podcast platform of choice. Find out more about Capstone Companies at capstone-companies.com. Multifamily Method is executive produced by Capstone Companies. Audio production for the podcast provided by Andy Go of Gojo Studios, and video production by Yash Mystery of Mystery Projects.